Well, welcome to Prophetic Perspectives, where we look at current events through the lens of the prophetic. I'm Chris Reed, and I'm joined by our Vice President of Spiritual Services, Tom Hardiman. Tom, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, so, there's a target-rich environment, as usual, right now in the news. So many things are going on. It almost seems like a perfect storm of news stories. We've said this before, but it's true that it seems like, 5-10 years ago that there was like one main news story that would last for a while. And then any other news stories, were almost like fillers. But now it's like major headlines all coming together, all happening at the same time that are like earth-shaking significance to them.
The portion of Matthew chapter 24 lists a whole array of things. Famines, pestilence, earthquake, and rumors of wars, all kinds of things that are happening. And it seems like week after week, we have these major events that are unfolding. And the onslaught of and the revelation of higher levels of evil are coming into full view.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, I think that the scripture is clear in the book of Revelation, how that the righteous will become more righteous, and how that, the evil will become more evil. In Revelation 22:11, let the unrighteous continue, to be unrighteous.
Yeah.
And let the unrighteous person continue to do unrighteousness. But let the one who does right continue to do right. And let the holy person continue to be holy. So really what we see here is this ongoing dynamic of Isaiah chapter 60. Mm-hmm. At a time in the earth when gross darkness will cover the earth and cover the people, which I think we're in.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, the glory of the Lord is going to rise upon the people of God in a new way, cause the righteous to become more righteous and the wicked to become even more wicked. And we're going to see almost an accentuating of these scenarios where light is going to become lighter, dark is going to become darker, and it seems like the harvest of the wheat and the tares are culminating at the same time.
Last week we had a gathering here at MorningStar. And when we're talking about light becoming brighter, at our conference, there were manifestations, as you're well aware of, because you were right in the middle of it, of the presence of God that we haven't seen in a number of years here. And it is really powerful and really encouraging. So while we have all this darkness unfolding, there is this thing that God's doing that is so drawing, so much you want to be a part of that. And I think we're going to need that with everything that's unfolding on the face of the earth. These are like the birth pains that Jesus talked about, Absolutely. One after another, and they get more increasingly intense.
Yeah, and as a woman gets close to giving birth, as you were mentioning, the birth pains do get closer together.
Yes.
The further out they are from actually giving birth, they may be spread apart further and further in time as far as the contractions, but a sign that there is a close birth, that birth is coming soon in the birthing process is when the contractions get more intense and they get closer together.
Yeah.
And I think this is happening right now in the world. I think what you're seeing, what we're seeing is that very thing happening. The contractions are getting closer together and more intense as we see all of these major news stories happening and coming together all at once.
Yeah, these are certainly exciting times for the believers, and I'm firmly convinced that God wants us to focus on that part of it, because He said these things are going to be. They're going to be troubles that we're going to have to endure. But it's also very distressing with some of the wickedness that we see even escalating, and some of the boldness of the people that are expressing these points of view. I call to mind portions of the book of Romans where it talks about people believing that they are wise, they become as fools, thinking that they have the answers, and yet what they're saying is foolishness.
Yeah, Romans chapter 1.
Yes.
Where Paul wrote to the early New Testament church, where he said that we would see, the creation would become so corrupted by the side of those on the dark that they would actually begin to worship the creation above the Creator and change, this whole concept of worship and everything becoming fleshly and beastly in nature, everything that appeals to the base fallen nature of fallen man.
Yes, it's maddening.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do believe where sin abounds, grace does that much more abound. And so for us as believers, we need to find in the midst of all of this place of grace that God will help us. With every temptation, there's a way of escape. With every trial, there's a way that God gives us out. And so while we don't want to become so focused on the evil, it becomes the expression of our daily report of what's going on. Nevertheless, we need to be wise about what we see unfolding.
That's some great scriptures that you quoted there, and I think it even goes further in Romans, where it says, because they did not retain God in their knowledge,
Yes.
God turned them over to believe delusions, over to a reprobate mind, to believe and to do those things which are totally against the natural ways of creation, the natural order of creation. And Tom, we're talking about this because what we're seeing happening right now in light of Disney.
Yeah.
I mean, I cannot think of a more evil strategy of the enemy to highlight gender confusion, gender dysphoria, sexual dysphoria, with a place that is primarily made to entertain children and to entertain families.
This is the target of the enemy, even from the very beginning. When you have the conflict in the same house with Cain and Abel, there's brothers that are having issues with each other, and the offspring is what the enemy has been after.
That's right.
And so one of the greatest regrets or judgments that people can feel in their heart is when their children are affected. And I do believe God wants us to stand up and combat and speak out against the evil that we're seeing that is really targeted at our children. I mean, talk about something that provokes a response. Mm-hmm. For those of us that have children and grandchildren, it is that sort of thing that is, I believe, it makes us have this revulsion in our heart to what's occurring.
Yeah.
And so this thing that happens with Disney that God that we're being made aware of, I believe that there's going to be great resistance by the people of God to this sort of stuff.
Yeah. Financial, legal consequences for Disney, not because of failure, but because of their support and endorsement of the LGBTQ agenda. And, with that being said, this is all about indoctrination of children.
Yes.
If you can get children at a place like Disney to see gender confusion, gender dysphoria, sexual dysphoria at a young age, then you can corrupt their minds to think these things are normal or okay. And I'll tell you this, I think this is one of the reasons why I think MorningStar, Tom, has this mantle of education. When Rick Joyner and Dave Yarnes went out to visit Oral Roberts at the end of his life, they went out and Oral Roberts, I believe, laid hands and said that MorningStar would have an influence and a mantle of education. And this is what Disney is trying to do, educate or indoctrinate children. And this is honestly the reason why I'm so excited about this upcoming Education Reformation Association Conference here at MorningStar, June 26th through 28th. And if you're listening or you're watching and you've heard us talk about this, you can actually register now going to mstarevents.com. I encourage you to check it out because this is going to be a conference. Myself, Rick, Chuck Pierce, several of us are going to be speaking regarding teaching people. If you're interested in coming in and addressing the education mountain, providing alternative education, whether that's homeschooling, Christian school, private school, all the how-tos, all the details, and the reason for the need for this is going to be articulated. And things like this, Tom, and when we come back from the break, I'm going to get into a prophecy the Lord gave me in April of 2019 about a Disney scandal. So stay tuned. We'll be right back in just a minute.
SF opened up this whole new world for me where I felt confident in myself. I didn't have that looming feeling of fear and anxiety, which was plaguing my life, and I had no idea.
My favorite thing about SF was probably when we were allowed to experience God in the outdoors. When I say that, I mean when we were on our hikes, we actually had an hour or two where our director would encourage us to go out in the wilderness and just experience the Lord, pray and ask Him, God, what are you speaking right now to us, to our class, to whoever? And we would come back after an hour or two and we would just share kind of what the Lord spoke to us in the wilderness.
The leaders and the people above you, the second and third years that help you through these hikes, they kind of become like spiritual sisters and brothers and fathers and mothers, and it's actually the friendship and camaraderie that is built through SF is like nothing I've ever experienced before.
Well, welcome back to Prophetic Perspectives. And, I wanted to share this. We're talking about Disney and the strategic plan to indoctrinate our kids. The woke left is working through Disney and their liberal employees to indoctrinate our children. Here is this Disney scandal prophecy that you're going to see there on your screen on April 21st, 2019. I said this on Monday morning, April 1st, 2019. I had a vision of a coming scandal with Disney World, and it seemed to be from the one in Orlando, Florida. I heard the word furlough, assuming employees and workers will be furloughed as a result of this scandal. I'm praying for this scandal to be exposed before irreparable damage is done and more people are hurt, financially and otherwise. I said I'll post this on social media. I believed that the Lord showed me. We're talking 3 years plus, 3+ years ago, of a scandal that would hit Disney, a large scale that would affect them financially, and that there would be an exposing of deep perversion, that would ultimately cost them financially. And right now, we see this very thing unfolded in the news. And as you saw that on the screen, you saw the timestamp and the note in my iPhone. I wanted to put that there so that when this came to pass, as I do with just about all of my prophecies, that it's their timestamp when people knew that it first came out. But I believe this was a word from the Lord, and it's taken 3 years. And we all know in part, we see in part, we prophesy in part, but I believe this is a part of what the Lord was warning this was coming.
That which is covers is going to be revealed. And this has probably been in the works for quite some time.
Yeah.
And now that it's become public, it is predictable, I believe, that there's a reaction from the righteous. And even for people that don't know the Lord, there's something unnatural that they're presenting to the populace of our nation and nations. And internally, there's this reaction. We just cannot condone this. It's not natural.
Yeah. We don't want it to be a trendsetter, and we don't want Disney to feel that they can use their popularity with the younger population for the left to hijack Disney to further these woke, extreme, gender dysphoria, LGBTQ stuff.
You know, Chris, one of the topics in our meeting last week that we had for our leaders was that it's time for our leaders to speak out. And I believe it's not only for leaders, but it's for believers to take a stand against the trends in our society to be inclusive and accepting of things that really are perversions, that really do have targeting, that are targeting our young people. And so I'm really encouraged with what you're doing with the new era of education and what that conference represents. I do believe it represents an enlarging of our hearts to have a broader level of assignment in educating our young people. I do believe that some churches that stand idle during the week could be called to initiate Christian education and righteous education, that we need to really push back against the things that are happening, not only at Disney, but in some of our public schools. The curriculum that's being offered our children is actually pornographic.
Yeah.
It's disgusting and it's detestable. And it's time for believers to take a stand.
I agree. You know, if you're not familiar with the details of this story of which I'm talking, what is going on with Disney is a lot of families across the country are reconsidering any previous Disney-friendly stance in their homes, including the movies and streaming services, theme parks, all different forms of entertainment in this Disney media conglomerate. And this kind of really began when Disney's CEO, Bob Chapek, opposed the bill that was signed into law recently by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, known as the Parental Rights in Education Bill. Now, of course, this was a bill that Florida enacted in light of the recent comments made in the Virginia gubernatorial race, where Terry McAuliffe, who was running as the Democrat for governor, said parents didn't have a right to have a say in what the children were being taught. Of course, the backlash, the revolt from that was they put a conservative, a Republican, in as governor in a strongly blue-leaning state that is blue-leaning largely in part by Washington, D.C. But anyways, this law that the CEO of Disney spoke out against is a law that would prohibit Florida teachers from instructing very young students, and I'm talking about kindergarten through third grade, about gender identity, sexual orientation. And what's interesting is Disney had not taken a public stance on this issue, but the belief is he caved to a small number of woke workers in Disney who are upset at the new law in Florida. And it's interesting because Disney World, Disneyland has decided as a result of this new law to ban the use of gender greetings within their parks. So in other words, terms such as, quote, boys and girls, unquote, or, quote, ladies and gentlemen, unquote, will no longer be uttered by Disney employees on Disney grounds. Now, this is craziness. I mean, what you have is Disney is now promoting a full spectrum of lifestyles that don't align with biblical values of good and evil. And I think Christians are waking up to the fact that this is not your grandmother's Disney. In fact, what we're seeing is a total abdication, you might say, of the approach of Walt Disney, who created Disney with the movies, the theme park, and all that to be a family-friendly, safe environment, not an environment where children, I'm talking kindergarten through third grade, okay, are being taught about sex education and the perverted form of it. And it really seems like, Tom, that this wokeness, I call it the woke joke. And it really is. It's a woke joke, and it's a lot of woke smoke.
Yeah.
You know, because it really is an agenda from hell. And I am so thankful for Governor Ron DeSantis. Florida seems to be one of those chic nations that, you know, a few years ago it was kind of like a swing state. You know, you think in terms of the 2000 election, Bush v. Gore. But man, the last few years it seems like Florida, you know, has put their foot down and said, no, we're not going to cave to this liberal, woke, smoke joke agenda. And we're going to stand and we're not going to let our kids be swept away into this moral perversion.
This reminds me of portions in Ezekiel where the Lord's looking for someone to stand in the gap and someone to build up a hedge. I do think that there has been intercession that has happened both in our nation and perhaps really strongly in the state of Florida that has caused people to evaluate and resist the enemy coming in like a flood. And so I credit individuals who have been the intercessors that have stood against this flood of evil that is beginning to be an agenda that is so highlighted that you can't help but see it. Professing themselves to become as wise, they became as fools.
Yeah. Changing the glory of the image of God into that of animals.
Yeah.
You know, the LGBTQ activists are using corporations like Disney, among others, to force their agenda on the public. They know that the American public is going to take advantage of historical places in our nation that people associate with fun, with family, with entertainment like Disney, and they harness that to further project their left-leaning wokeism.
Yeah.
Wokeism, brokeism. I mean, and ultimately, I think we're going to see, we already are, Disney have to go through a serious reformation. I think this could lead to, because obviously there's been, the authority for them to be fully self-governing. The state of Florida stripped that away from them, and I think we're going to see this unfolding more and more. And I want to say this to all of you that are watching or listening: don't forget your prayers. No matter where you are, you may feel insignificant. Your prayers and intercession are making the difference as we fight for this nation, which is worth fighting for. Well, Tom, thank you for joining me today. And thank you for watching Prophetic Perspectives. Tell your friends and family about this. Check out our conference lineup coming up, mstarevents.com. We got so many things exciting coming. Until next time, I'm Chris Reed. This is Tom Hardiman. God bless you.
Bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the following contest, it is set for one fall. Introducing first, from Lithuania, he weighs 100.
Welcome to the Man Up Show with your host, Nikita Koloff. Real talk with real men with real stories.
And so I believe that there's going to be a company of people, a church within the church, and I think that calling is going forth even now. And that calling that is going forth is going to come upon a group, a company of believers to restore all things in the church that has been lost from the book of Acts. Hey, I'm Chris Reed here from MorningStar, and I want to tell you about our upcoming 2022-2023 School of the Prophets Weekend Intensives. It's 3 days a month starting this September, and it goes through May. This has been a transformational experience. Last year's course the majority of the people said they dramatically increased in prophetic revelation. Please check this out. This will bless you. It'll change your life. mstaru.com for more details. I hope you'll sign up there. Hello, I'm Chris Reed, and I want to tell you about the upcoming New Era Conference. ERA being an acronym for Education Reformation Association. It's here at MorningStar here in Fort Mill, South Carolina, and it'll be June 26th through the 28th. I'll be speaking, Rick Joyner will be speaking, Chuck Pierce is going to be speaking as well. We have a vision to empower Christian educators and administrators. If you feel called to education in any area, if you want to train and disciple the next generation, or you want to start a kingdom school of any kind of, or homeschooling, or a church Christian school, or you desire to work with like-minded reformers, then I'm putting out a call for you. The information for this conference is at the bottom of your screen. Just go to mstarevents.com, and I really hope to see you there.
Never apologize for who you are. Be who God has called you to be, and be it boldly.
Hi, Nikita Koloff here, and I am excited to announce the first annual MorningStar Men's Conference, August 25th to the 27th. Our theme this year, Man Up, it's time. And we have a phenomenal lineup of speakers, including NBA All-Star Al Wood, WWE Superstar Lex Luger, Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, David and Jason Benham, the Benham Brothers, Chris Reed, and of course Dr. Rick Joyner. Let's not forget world-renowned evangelist Frank Shelton. Click the link below and sign up early. You do not want to miss this event.